A watch listing tells you it's water resistant to 200 meters, 21 joules, Swiss made, with an in-house movement. Sounds like a serious watch. At least, that's what the listing wants you to think. Because out of those 4 phrases, only one tells you something real. One is almost meaningless. One has a loophole you could drive a truck through. And one is the single most overpriced word in watches. By the end of this video, you'll read any listing the way the person selling it does. You'll know which specs matter, which are decoration, and exactly where a brand is reaching into your wallet. This is every watch term that actually matters. 14 rungs, from can't read a listing to speaks the language. Start at the bottom. Number 1, the crown. That little ribbed knob on the case, and almost everyone assumes its only job is setting the time. But the listing won't tell you this. The crown is the single biggest hole in the watch, the easiest path for water to get inside, which is why you'll see the words screw down crown. It threads down and tightens against a rubber gasket, sealing that hole shut. No screw down crown, no real water resistance, whatever number is on the dial. The most common way people kill a watch isn't dropping it, it's wearing it in water with the crown left unscrewed. Now the ring around the glass. Number 2, the bezel. The ring framing the crystal, which people treat as trim. On the right watch, it's a tool, and 3 types matter. A dive bezel turns one direction only, and that's a safety feature. You line it up with the minute hand before a dive, and if it's knocked, it can only read more time passed, so you surface early, not late. A GMT bezel is marked to 24 hours to track a second time zone. A tachymeter is a fixed speed scale for clocking how fast something moves. Here's the tell. If a watch is sold as a diver but its bezel spins both ways, that bezel is jewelry, not a tool. The next number almost nobody checks, and it decides whether the watch even fits your wrist. Number 3, lug-to-lug. Everyone buys by case diameter, the 40 or 42 millimeters in the title. That's the width of the dial side, and on its own, it lies to you. Lug-to-lug is the distance from the tip of the top lugs to the tip of the bottom lugs, the watch's real footprint on your wrist. And it matters more than diameter, because long, straight lugs on a 40 wear worse than short, curved ones on a 42. If the lug-to-lug is wider than your wrist, the lugs hang off the edge and the whole thing looks borrowed. Next is the part protecting the dial, where one word separates a watch that ages beautifully from a scratched mess. Number 4, crystal types. The crystal is the clear cover over the dial, and the word sounds expensive whatever it's made of. Acrylic is plastic. It scratches easily, polishes right back out, and almost never shatters, which is why it survives on cheap watches today. Mineral glass is harder, resists scratches better, but once it's scratched, it stays scratched. Then there's sapphire. Synthetic sapphire rates 9 out of 10 on the hardness scale, one step below diamond. So, in normal life, basically nothing you own can scratch it. Sapphire is the one worth caring about, full stop. So when a watch carries a real price and the listing quietly says mineral crystal, it's hoping you don't know the gap. The next term keeps the dial readable in the dark, and it's where cheap watches fake it hardest. Number 5, Lume, the glow on the hands and markers. A listing says luminous without telling you which kind, and the kinds aren't close. The standard today is Super Luminova, a light-absorbing pigment, basically a glow-in-the-dark sticker. You charge it under light, it glows brightest the first hour, fades over the night, and you recharge it the next day. The other kind is tritium gas tubes, tiny sealed tubes of radioactive gas that glow on their own for around 25 years. No charging, which is why you find them on serious dive and field watches from Ball, Luminox, and Marathon. On truly old watches, you'll find radium, which glowed forever and poisoned the women who painted it, so it's banned now. Cheap watches use one thin coat that's dead before you finish brushing your teeth. Quality Lume is thick coats, or real tritium. Now open it up. Number 6, movement versus caliber. Quick on purpose. The movement is the engine that makes the watch run. The caliber is the specific model of that engine, the way a car engine has a model name. 3 families: manual, which you wind by hand; automatic, which winds itself from a weighted rotor that spins as your wrist moves; and quartz, which runs off a battery and a vibrating crystal, the most accurate and cheapest to live with. We broke down each one in our movements video, link up there. Movement is the engine, caliber is which engine. and one number that engine produces tells you how long it runs once it leaves your wrist. Number 7. Power reserve. A mechanical watch stores energy in a wound spring. Power reserve is how many hours it runs on a full wind before it stops. Most sit around 40 hours. Plenty of modern ones reach 70 or 80. Here's where people misjudge it. They assume 40 hours coast through a weekend. It won't. Take an automatic off Friday night, and by Sunday afternoon, it's stopped dead. Quartz sidesteps all this because a battery lasts years. So power reserve isn't a luxury brag, it's a convenience number. The gap between a watch still ticking Monday and one you have to babysit. From here, the listings stop describing the watch and start selling you. The next 3 terms are the exact ones brands count on you misunderstanding. Number 8. Water resistance ratings, the one almost everyone gets wrong. 30 meters does not mean you can swim 30 meters down. It doesn't mean you can swim at all. Here's what the number hides. That rating comes from a one-time pressure test, in a lab, on a brand new watch sitting perfectly still. So here's what the maker actually intends. 30 meters or 3 atmospheres covers splashes, rain, and washing your hands. Not a swimming watch. 50 meters adds brief, shallow contact, but most makers still say keep it out of the pool. 100 meters is where real swimming and snorkeling begin, the everyday sweet spot for one watch that does it all. 200 meters is genuine diving territory, with a screw-down crown and the build to back it. So why does a 30-meter watch flood the second you swim in it? Because that test happens once, the seals start aging the moment you wear it. Hot showers and steam wreck the gaskets, and jumping in spikes the pressure well past a gentle still water test. The most expensive watch mistake going isn't dropping it on tile, it's a guy reading 30 meters and confidently diving into a pool. The next one people get wrong because 2 words sound almost identical and mean completely different things. Number 9. Chronometer versus chronograph. The single most confused pair in watches, and once it clicks, you'll catch people mixing them up forever. A chronograph is a stopwatch. It's the watch with the extra subdials and pushers, and pressing them times how long something takes. That's all it is, a feature. It says nothing about accuracy. A chronometer is the opposite. It's an accuracy certification, meaning the movement was sent off, tested independently, and proven to keep time within a tight margin. In Switzerland, the word chronometer is legally protected. To earn it, a movement goes to a testing body called COSC, runs for 15 days in 5 positions and 3 temperatures, and has to keep time no worse than 4 seconds slow or 6 seconds fast every single day. So a watch can be a chronograph, a chronometer, both, or neither. A chronograph is a feature you can see on the dial. A chronometer is a promise somebody tested. One insider note, COSC just rolled out an even stricter tier in 2026 that tests the whole finished watch, but the number to keep in your head is 4 slow, 6 fast. If chronometer versus chronograph just clicked into place, do me one favor and hit subscribe. Watch Realist takes apart the stuff brands would rather you not think too hard about, with no sponsors and no affiliate links, so nothing here is steering you toward a sale. One spine term left, and it's the number brands have leaned on for 100 years to imply quality while telling you almost nothing. Number 10. Joules. When a watch says 21 joules, that is not a measure of luxury or value. Those joules are bearings. Tiny synthetic rubies set at the high friction points so metal doesn't grind on metal. They cut wear and help the watch hold accuracy. 17 joules is the classic fully jouled count for a simple, time-only movement. An automatic needs a few more, because the self-winding rotor adds moving parts, so 21 to 25 is normal. Add a stopwatch or a calendar, and the count climbs again. More joules just means more moving parts. It does not mean a better or pricier watch. And the rubies are synthetic and dirt cheap, 100 for a couple of dollars. So why did the number ever sound impressive? Because decades ago, United States import taxes were tied to joule count. The number got stamped on the movement, and some brands added pointless joules in spots that didn't need them, purely to print a bigger figure. So 21 joules tells you the watch is probably an automatic. It does not tell you it's good. That's the spine done. From here, it isn't about specs. It's about the words brands print on the dial to make you feel something. This is where you stop getting sold to. Number 11. Swiss made. The most trusted label in watches, and it's doing less than you think. Since 2017, to print Swiss-made, a watch needs a Swiss movement, has to be cased and inspected in Switzerland, and have at least 60% of its manufacturing cost run up there. Here's the loophole. It's 60% of the cost, not 60% of the parts, and research and development counts toward that 60%. So the case, dial, crystal, even a chunk of the movement can be made cheaply overseas, as long as the cost math lands and final assembly happens on Swiss soil. Swiss-made is real and enforceable, but it's a floor, not a guarantee. It tells you where the costs were counted, not that every part is Swiss. The next phrase is the one brands charge the biggest premium for, and it's the heart of how you get sold to. Number 12. In-house movement, also sold to you as a manufacturer caliber. When it's genuine, it's a real achievement. A true in-house movement is one the brand designs, builds, and assembles itself, exclusive to its own watches. Only a short list truly pulls it off. The Rolexes, the Pateks, the Grand Seikos. Now here's the flex. Most watches that brag about an in-house movement are running a third-party engine from ETA or Sellita, with a branded rotor swapped on top and a fresh name stamped on it. This isn't a rumor. Panerai once sold an in-house movement that turned out to be an outside base, with the maker's stamp still on the plate. Tag Heuer's celebrated in-house caliber was built on a Seiko design. Even Tudor carefully calls its movements manufacture calibers rather than in-house, because the company that makes them also supplies Breitling. And the honest part nobody markets, in-house doesn't even guarantee a better watch. A well-regulated ETA is proven, serviceable anywhere, with parts everywhere, while an in-house caliber can mean costly proprietary servicing and long waits. So in-house is the word brands lean on to justify thousands in markup, and the question that actually mattered was never, is it in-house? It was, is this a good, reliable, well-finished movement for the money? The dial talks to your ego. The spec sheet talks to your wallet. Once you read both, nobody gets to sell you a story. Two fast ones before you go. Number 13. Homage versus Replica. An homage openly borrows a famous design, but wears its own name and never pretends to be the original. That's legal, and plenty of respected microbrands live there. A replica is a fake. It copies the design and fraudulently stamps the original brand's name on it to pass as real. That's counterfeiting, and it's a crime. An homage says inspired by, out loud. A replica lies about what it is. Buying an homage is taste. Buying a replica is getting scammed, or scamming somebody else. Last rung. The slang that tells the room you belong here. Number 14. The Collector's Slang Lightning Round. Your grail is the watch you'd save for years to land, the end-of-the-road piece. A beater, or daily wearer, is the watch you don't baby, the one you'd wear to the gym or a job site without a second thought. And patina is the way an old dial and its lume warm and discolor over decades. And on the right vintage piece, collectors pay more for it, because earned age can't be faked. Use those three right, and you're not reading the language anymore, you're speaking it. So go back to that listing from the start. 200 meters, you now know that's a real swim and then some rating, not a number to test. 21 jewels, decoration dressed up as a spec. Swiss made, a floor with a loophole. In-house movement, the word you were always meant to pay extra for. Same four phrases, completely different watch, because now you can read it. That's the point of this channel. Not to tell you what to buy, but to make sure that when you do, you're the one making the call, not the listing. Subscribe and we'll keep handing you the language, because the terms aren't trivia. Knowing them is how you stop getting sold to.